Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, let me congratulate our embassy and all those who are involved in inventing and then perfecting this particular conference. This is really a remarkable achievement, and we should give them one more hand. Thank you. And as a measure of my discipline, I came with two versions of my talk. One big one, one small one. I will deliver the small one with the extra indulgence permitted by the chairman. Now, first, I have a name of my own for Vision 2030. It is the Kenyan Renaissance. The diaspora can be one of the major engines of transformation for the Kenyan Renaissance. So I've often asked my Nigerian in-laws, my wife is from Nigeria, as to why the Nigerian diaspora is more hardworking than the Nigerians at home. My in-laws haven't always argued with me, but I sometimes wondered whether they were in tune with what I was saying. But I should really have been asking similar questions to myself and to Kenyan males generally. Kenyan women, I believe, are exceptionally hardworking, both domestically at home. They are both at home and abroad. But for Kenyan males, and here my fellow males will no doubt later on hold me accountable, I think we are slightly more highly motivated abroad than at home. I'll explain at the end of the talk how I reached that type of conclusion. Are the challenges of survival in foreign countries more productive than domestic challenges? Should diaspora Kenyans and Nigerians remit home not only money, but also a shared achievement motive? Can the work ethic be remitted? So the Kenyan Renaissance is partly a quest to work out the right balance between skills, values, and information. So we need to find out what type of skills and ensure that they are of the utmost relevance for 2030. This is where we link up with strategies that I have articulated elsewhere in my writings. Starting from the premise that formal educational institutions in Africa were originally mainly based on imitative European models, one Renaissance strategy is greater attention to intellectual indigenization of our academic institutions to make them more relevant to Africa and to our culture and to our history. And we are helped sometimes by some of our own scholars who have interpreted our heritage for university levels. I think especially of my old colleague at Makerere, John Beattie, and his best-selling book on African philosophies and religion, a major contribution towards indigenizing an interpretation of philosophy. Another Kenyan Renaissance strategy is the domestication of what was borrowed from others, like making academic institutions, originally foreign models, much more in tune with our needs and with our ambitions for 2030. Our universities could be made more relevant to domestic Kenyan needs and more oriented towards our aspirations. A third Renaissance strategy is intellectual diversification. African schools taught much more world history in the colonial period than they have since then. So when I was a student at school in Mombasa, and we were taught the British Empire history was our subject of history. In reality, it had much more of world history within it, because the British were a global imperial power, than our students these days sometimes get, with a much narrower focus. A fourth renaissance for Kenya is horizontal interpenetration, linking up with other civilizations and learning from them. I don't know how many of us here have noticed that the only successful ouster of Arab dictators in the Arab Spring have occurred so far on the African side of the Arab world. So they have occurred in Tunisia, and they have occurred in Egypt, and with NATO's help, not always welcome, they have occurred in Libya. What many of you may not even remember is that the ouster by popular uprising started in Sudan in 1964 with the ouster by lawyers, students, professors, and they managed to throw out a military government in 1964. And then in 1985, I was even able to film the 1985 ouster of Jafar Numeri, which was also done by popular uprising, pro-democracy forces throwing out a military dictator. But all those 5 instances of ousters were done by Arabic-speaking Africans, so they were on the African side of the Arab world. So in a way, the success stories have been Afrabians. Africans who are not Arabs have not done it, and Arabs who are not Africans have not done it either. It's the combination of the two that have been successful in the Arab. So the fifth Renaissance strategy is the counter-penetrating the citadels of power as part of our Renaissance. So we have met an ultimate achievement, if you like, with Barack Obama as a form of counter-penetration. This is the son of a Kenyan who has become president of the United States. That may sound important, but I don't know how many of us here have reflected that Barack Obama right now, because he's president of the United States, he's the most powerful single black person in the history of civilization. There's never been any other black person entrusted with so much capacity for either good or evil, and we hope he will try his best not to let us down. So a sixth Kenyan Renaissance strategy is the pursuit of ecology-friendly modes of production, and we have been helped by our late sister Wangari Maathai, a heroine in this domain. A seventh Kenyan Renaissance strategy is the pursuit of human-friendly standards of consumption, as well as more attentiveness to global perspectives in how we behave. So all these are part of what some call Vision 2030, which your humble servant here would prefer to call the coming Kenyan Renaissance, and that how we interpret skills, values, and information would be very relevant towards making them a success. So finally, I owe you an explanation how I reached the conclusion that Kenyan males, not Kenyan females, as I said, have not let us down, but Kenyan males do better abroad than they do at home, And that's simply partly autobiographical. And then I've been looking for evidence to contradict my autobiography, and I'm at a loss because I can't find the evidence that would contradict it. The autobiography is when I was just, before I ever went abroad, and I was studying in Mombasa, and many of you who are familiar with my life know that I nearly failed a Cambridge School Certificate examination. Makerere would not touch me with a barge pole. In those days, you needed at least to get second grade performance. Later on, I became a spectacular scholar at Makerere, but as a student, they wouldn't have me because I hadn't done well enough in Cambridge School Certificate. I was an African Kenyan male letting myself down when I was operating in domestic conditions. Fortunately for me, I got a second chance. I was interpreted by the colonial authorities at that time. They rediscovered me, and they themselves, although the Cambridge University examination was a British examination, British Director of Education in Kenya and the Kenyan governor at the time, Sir Philip Mitchell, happened to rediscover me. And they decided that Cambridge University did not do me justice, and they sent me to the United Kingdom to make amends and do justice to myself.
We achieved growth with the economic recovery strategy, but there were several projects that we could not achieve. I also remember, I'm proud of it, that actually the last thing I did at Children was actually drafting the National Economic and Social Council, trying to reconstitute this body that will now be used to, of course, again with the Ministry of Planning, Planning Ministry. And now we see all that being put into effect. Now, as a part of the diaspora, at least now, I think there is a lot we can do from this sense, and I'm talking about being also a researcher. At the Brookings Institution, one of the things that we are trying to do, in addition to providing Africans a platform to come and tell the US government, this is what we think, this is how we would. I know I've seen a lot of permanent secretaries who have been my hosts, and we have hosted finance ministers, we have hosted central bank governors. One way is we can provide a platform where Africans can come and articulate African voices and say this is what we consider necessary to achieve growth. But we have also from our side found that we can only be effective in the long term by linking up with other policy think tanks. So as Brookings Institution, we have partnerships with African think tanks. And our goal is to make sure that we can work with these think tanks so that they can be effective in terms of independent qualitative research. And I think so even from PAN, it's possible to do some of these things. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do as think tanks. Mr. Wayaya is not here, but I think it's very important that we should say something about education in Kenya and where it's going with all this framing. One of the things that I remember most about my time in Kenya was that the NAC government was, I think, elected on December 27th. Now, at that time, the budget did not provide for free primary education. But it was already to be provided in January, and the NAC government actually implemented free primary education. So again, with the determination, it's possible to, for resources and implement a program. There was no plan, there was no budget. I remember the minister calling us, can you tell us how we are going to try to really implement this program? But they did. So I think the issues that we would have liked to hear from Minister of Education is, of course, now access, but then the quality and relevance. And I think Mobo did mention these things, how we move on. Now, so since I'm not a speaker, I would like to open for a few questions. We have, if we keep my 40 minutes, we actually have 10 minutes for questions, if I keep my schedule. So I open for questions, and probably if you ask three, I think we can handle like 5. And okay, please, and be brief, be specific and to the point.
Okay, as most of us already know, that we've had issues with the violence, and especially with tribalism. I feel that as we as a nation of Kenya, as we try to kind of get towards being one nation and building one nation, I fear that we will lose our identity in terms of the values that we have as different tribes and our cultural beliefs that we have that make us as a society strong and differentiates us from different countries. I don't know how, and I'm directing this to Professor Ali Mazrui, what do you think that our Kenyan government should do, or we as the diaspora can help and ways that we can go about trying to make sure that we don't lose our identity and we don't lose our cultures?
Thank you. So the issue of identity for Professor Mazrui.
Okay, my name is Sisenoy, and my question is directed to Professor Juma. It's in regard to our education system. Yesterday, I saw in the paper that our universities in Kenya are badly ranked in Africa and in the world. So my question is, how can the government really chip in to, provide standards and quality education, and especially the university system? Because now all the universities are kind of just all over the place. More university has I don't know how many branches. And how can we really trim that down to, have solid and quality-based institutions?
Okay, that's on quality. And again, we wish Mr. Waya was here, but we could get Dr. Juma to comment. Yeah.
Professors Mazrui and Juma, first of all, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here for all that you've done for our country. It's been tremendous. Earlier on today, we were asked to transpose the Singapore population with the Kenyan population. And I want to reverse the question a little bit. If this room was filled with changa drinking, dirty, matatu drivers from all over Kenya, can you speak on behalf of yourselves and the other panelists as to whether you would change the interaction that's going on with us right now?
Okay, I didn't get that one. Well, but that's okay. They will interpret it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Henry Ongeri, and I'm from the state of Minnesota. And my question, I guess I'll direct it to Professor Mazrui. It's a great honor, sir, to address you. I never thought I would be able to do this. I just read in books. I practice law in Minnesota now, but I was originally trained as a lawyer in Kenya. And the issue of the inability to transfer skills from our, what I believe is an excellent education system, to this place really annoys me. Here's what happened. I came here as an advocate to the High Court of Kenya, having gone through school of law. I could not practice law in Minnesota. I went to the state of New York. Fortunately, they let me do that, but I still couldn't practice law in Minnesota. So my colleagues and I had to sue the state of Minnesota, and just this July, we got a ruling that overturned that law that said we cannot practice law holding a foreign degree. Professor Mazrui, I know you had some strategies on how to overthrow archaic systems. Would you suggest some for Kenyans?
Very good. Skills transfer.
My name is Alice Rain from Rain Education Incorporated. And I had a question about our Kenyan education system. I know we're cultured and we have a lot to offer as far as education, but I do feel we are not making the proper modifications for our children, where it's a one-size-fits-all, and we're not providing enough dignity for our children. So the renaissance Mr. Mazrui was talking about in education, we have to go ahead and do it as soon as we can. So tell us being educators in diaspora, I teach for the state of North Carolina, how can we help bring dignity in education in Kenya? Thank you.
Okay, so quality. Okay, the final one, please.
Thank you. My name is Fabian Makani. I'm based here in Washington, D.C. My question is to Dr. Juma, Professor Juma. You suggested a partnership between Kenya and institutions of higher learning in the U.S. and with a component of the diaspora. Can you expand just maybe 1 minute on that so that, you give us an idea as to where you think we should be going?
Okay, thank you very much. And now I'll shift to Professor Mazrui.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your own kind words about my contribution in our careers and to our country. The issue of how to deal with identity politics not just in Kenya, but in Africa as a whole, has been bedeviled us. How do we get our elections, for example, to be ethnic proof when at the moment they tend to be ethnic prone? In general, how can we have politics that are ethnic neutral in response to our constitutions and their aspiration for ethnic neutrality? It's tough, but we must definitely do it, not just at election time. Elections are crucial. If we get it wrong ethnically at election time, lives can be lost. But it's strategies that need to be adopted throughout much of the rest of the period to make sure that we gradually de-ethnicize our politics and create greater professionalism. In general, with regard to the second question, again, it is true, the chairman is right that the focus was not clear, but it is a question which tries to understand how we can have a relationship between the diaspora and the domestic population in ways which are more productive. And our entire enterprise at this conference is concerned with that, and we will no doubt be formulating recommendations at the end of the conference.